Ever wondered how the game Wordle is built? Well, in the next set of videos, we're going to be building it all from scratch using nothing but HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We'll start by building our static layout, just the header and the grid of the board. Once we have the layout all set up, we're going to start wiring up our logic. So I'll start by going into my index.html file. First thing I'll do, I'll go ahead and update this title here to Wordle. This is what appears as the title of your tab on the browser. We'll go ahead and save that. Now in the body, I'm going to go ahead and create a header section in which I will have my H1, which will have the title of the game. Below, I'm going to have my main section, which will have a div with an ID of game. And inside of that, I'm going to have another div that will contain the grid itself. But let me show you a different way that we could do this. So instead of creating the div ourselves and typing in our ID, I'll go ahead and type div and use the symbol that signifies IDs in CSS, which is the £. And this is going to be my Wordle -grid. And if I hit the tab key on my keyboard, it will automatically create that for me. Now let's go ahead and save this. Next, I'll go into the head section and I'm going to add a link to our CSS file. Our file is located in the assets folder. There's another folder called styles inside of that. And then finally, it is style.css. So I'll go ahead and update this href to go to /assets/styles/style.css. Before we move any further, let me go ahead and actually run my application just so we can see the impact of the code that we're typing as we're doing that live. So I'll go ahead and open my terminal and I'll run npm run dev. This is one of the ways that generally you would be able to run an HTML file in your application. The reason I'm going with this one is that because I have a bunch of other configurations that's already set up for your project. And this is going to be the way to wire them all up together. So if I run npm run dev, it will run the application on the local host port 3000. So let me go ahead and bring over the browser into the view. And I'll split the screen in half. Right now, if I refresh, here we go. We get this Wordle page loaded on our browser. Now, browsers generally have certain styles that are automatically imposed on your code. As you can see, there's a certain font that has already been chosen for us. There is some padding, there is some margins, and a bunch of other styles that has already been imposed. So one of the most common things that you would do whenever you start on a new project is that you perform sort of a CSS reset. So there are libraries that could do that. One of those is normalize.css. For now, our use case is much simpler. So I'll just go ahead into the style.css file. In the body section, I'll set the margin to 0. I'll set the padding to 0 as well. And we'll change the font family to any sans serif font. And with that, you can see that has already been applied. The margins is gone, the padding is gone, and now we've changed that default font that was applied onto our screen. From there, I can go ahead and start applying different background colors and text. So for the background, I'll choose this color here, 0B1623. All right, and we'll change the colors of our fonts as well. So they are F5, F8, FF. Next, let's go ahead and apply some styles to our header section. So for the header, we're going to change the text align and let's keep it centered. Here we go. Also, let's go ahead and add some sort of a border at the bottom of this div. And that'll be a 2-pixel solid line of this color, 3A, 3A, 3C. All right, looking good so far. Up next, we want to go ahead and start creating those letter boxes that will make up our grid. So I'll switch back to my index.html. And right now, I just want to create a single row. So basically 5 boxes for 5 letters. I can go ahead and create a div with the class of letter, but then I will have to repeat that multiple times. Or I could do div with the class of letter, multiply that by 4, hit the tab, and here we go. we have all of our letters boxes. Now, if I save that, obviously nothing appears on the screen. So let's go ahead and populate it with some word here, which will go with the word words. All right, we can see as we save the file that they were populated one letter per line. That's default behavior of what a div is, because that's the difference between what a div and a span is. But now we're going to start applying some styles that will make that look a lot more like the game. So I'll switch over to my style.css file again. And in here, first thing I'll do is target my Wordle grid div itself. So we're targeting it by ID. This is why you see the pound sign. I'm going to change the display mode for this to grid. And we're going to change the template or the grid template columns to have 5 columns. So we'll do the repeat function. We want 5 columns, each of which will have around 60 pixels. Let's save that. Now at least they show up on one line because that's what a grid would look like. Now next, let's start applying some of the styles for our letter boxes. So first we want the width to be 60 pixels. We want the height to also be 60 pixels. We'll change the font size to 2 rems or relative ems. Save. So far we're getting closer. And because somebody may mistakenly provide the letters in lowercase like so, we want the game to kind of look always consistent. So the way I'm going to go about that is by adding a text transform property to always change everything to uppercase. That way, regardless of what case of your letter you're providing, they're always going to be transformed into uppercase. Now, obviously, we also want our boxes to have that sort of a border around it. So we'll do a border. This is 2 pixel solid of the same color as earlier. So 3A, 3A, 3C. Hit save. Here we go. Now let's add a little bit of a breather room between them, but I can do that in the grid. So basically we'll add a gap of around 8 pixels each. Now you can see there's a little bit of a breathing room between the boxes. Next, let's try to keep that text kind of centered within the letter box itself. So I'll change the display mode for my div here to flex. We'll do align items center, and we'll do justify content to center. Now, if you hover over those, they will give you a little bit of a better explanation of what does align and justify mean, but I'll leave that for you to figure out. Now, as you can see, now we have all the letters centered in their own boxes. The only thing left to do is to actually make the entire grid centered on the screen. So let's do align items center. Okay, maybe that wasn't it. Maybe it's justify content actually. Here we go. Now we can see it. It's kind of actually stuck to where the header is. So let's also add some margin top of around 20 pixels or so. We saved that. Now this is looking good. Now, as you can see, all of those letter boxes are looking exactly the same. But as you know from the game, when you submit a word, you'll have to basically show whether a word or a character was in the correct location, if it was just misplaced, if it was incorrect altogether. And all of those are kind of represented by certain colors. So let's go ahead and create those colors. So for our correct word, we'll do correct. And we want the background to have the color of 538D4E. Same for the case of misplaced characters. We want that to be a background of B59F3B. And finally, for the incorrect or for the wrong or however you want to call it, that will have the background color of 3A, 3A, 3C. All right, so let's go ahead and manually apply those to our letter boxes here. So what if this here was correct? This one was misplaced. And this one or the rest of those were, incorrect. Now, if I hit save, boom, we get a row of colored boxes that visually match the Wordle game. So we've built our static foundation for the game here, the layout and the associated styles that we're going to be using in the game. Now, next, let's add a little bit of a flair to this by adding a light and dark mode switcher that will switch the game styles between those two different modes, and we'll do that in the next video.